In the shadowed underbelly of New York's Little Italy, where the air hung heavy with the scent of garlic and regret, Vincent Russo reigned supreme. At 45, he was the unchallenged don of the Russo family, a man forged in the fires of Sicilian blood feuds, his hands stained with the ink of loyalty oaths and the red of betrayal. His empire sprawled from the fog-shrouded docks of Brooklyn to the glittering high-rises of Manhattan, a web of whispers and silenced screams. Yet, beneath the tailored Armani suits and the perpetual scowl etched by years of vigilance, Vincent carried a ghost, the echo of his mother's voice, soft as olive leaves rustling in a Taormina breeze. She had died when he was 12, gunned down in a vendetta that orphaned him to the streets. Since then, love was a luxury he couldn't afford, a weakness that could unravel empires. It was a humid August evening in 2025 when Vincent sought refuge from the chaos. A rival family's botched hit had left 2 of his lieutenants bleeding in a warehouse, and the weight of retaliation pressed like a noose. He slipped into La Vite Vecchia, a forgotten trattoria tucked between a pawn shop and a crumbling tenement. The place was a relic, its faded red checkered tablecloths and Chianti bottles dangling like forgotten rosaries from the rafters. Vincent chose a corner booth, shadowed by a wilting ficus, and ordered a plate of arancini and a glass of Nero di Avola, simple, unpretentious, the way his mother used to make it. The waitress who approached was a vision of quiet fragility, like a porcelain doll left too long in the sun. Isabella Moretti, 28, with raven hair cascading in loose waves to her waist and eyes the color of aged Amaro, moved with the grace of someone who had learned to fade into walls. She had come to New York 5 years earlier, fleeing the suffocating grip of her family's expectations in Palermo. Orphaned young herself, she poured her inheritance into this dream of a restaurant, a sanctuary for the weary. But dreams curdled in the city, debts mounted, and Isabella worked double shifts, her smiles rationed like wartime rations. Shy to her core, she spoke little, her voice a murmur lost in the clatter of plates. Yet, there was a fire in her, buried, but unquenched. As she set down the steaming arancini, her fingers brushed the edge of the table, and she glanced up. Vincent's gaze, sharp as a stiletto, met hers for the briefest moment. Something in his presence unsettled her, the coiled power, the faint scar tracing his jaw like a map of old wars. But courtesy was her armor. In a voice barely above a whisper, laced with the lilt of her homeland, she said, "Benvenuti, signore. Si us farfalla di cori, welcome with the flutter of hearts." Vincent froze. The words weren't just Italian, they were Sicilian, pure and unadulterated, the dialect of his childhood hills. Si us farfalla di cori, a phrase his mother had woven into every greeting, a tender invocation meaning, with the flutter of hearts, as if each guest carried a fragile joy worth cradling. No one in this concrete jungle spoke it anymore. Not his associates, with their clipped Brooklyn accents. Not the women who circled him like sharks, drawn to power but blind to the men beneath. The sound pierced him like a ricocheting bullet, cracking the ice around his heart. His fork clattered against the plate, and for the first time in decades, Vincent Russo trembled, not from fear, but from the raw ache of remembrance. Isabella noticed. Her cheeks flushed rose, and she stepped back, mistaking his silence for offense. "Mi scusi," she murmured, turning to flee. But Vincent's hand shot out, gentle yet unyielding, catching her wrist. His touch was warm, calloused from years of gripping triggers and steering fates, but in that instant, it held no threat, only a plea unspoken. "Wait," he said, his voice gravelly, laced with the same ancient cadence. "Say it again. Please." She hesitated, her pulse racing beneath his fingers. No one had ever asked her to linger, to unveil the hidden parts of herself. But his eyes, storm gray, stormy with unspoken storms, held a vulnerability that mirrored her own. Swallowing, she repeated, "Benvenuti, si us farfalla di cori." This time, slower, letting the vowels bloom like wild Sicilian poppies. Vincent released her, but the connection lingered, electric as a summer storm. He gestured to the seat across from him. "Sit. For a moment. Tell me, where did you learn that?" What followed was no interrogation, but a confession. Over shared plates, her caponata sharp with eggplant and capers, his cannoli dusted with pistachio, they unraveled. Isabella spoke of Palermo's sun-baked alleys, of her nana's kitchen where dialects danced like fireflies. Vincent, against every instinct screaming danger, shared fragments of his own ghost, the lemon groves of his youth, the lullabies sung in the shadow of Mount Etna, the day the world turned crimson and left him adrift. For the first time, he wasn't the Don, just Vincent, a boy who had lost his way. As the night deepened, the trattoria emptied, leaving only the hum of the ancient espresso machine and the distant wail of sirens. Isabella's shyness melted under his gaze, revealing a strength forged in solitude. She laughed, a sound like church bells over the sea, when he admitted his first clumsy attempt at making Sfinchin, burning it to ash. He watched her, mesmerized, as she traced patterns in the condensation on her glass, her fingers elegant, unscarred. But shadows loomed. Vincent's world was no place for fragility. The next day, whispers reached him, a tale on the restaurant, courtesy of his rivals sniffing for weakness. He returned that evening, not as a patron, but as a guardian. "You must close this place," he urged, his voice low. "They're coming for leverage." Isabella's eyes flashed with defiance. "This is my heart, Vincent. La vite vecchia, the old vine. It bends, but it doesn't break. Like us. Us." The word hung between them, a bridge over chasms of doubt. In the kitchen's golden glow, amid the steam of simmering ragout, he pulled her close. Their kiss was tentative at first, her lips soft, tasting of salted olives and unspoken longing, then fierce, a collision of two souls starved for home. His hands framed her face, thumbs brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "I've built walls of stone," he whispered against her skin, "but you speak the language that crumbles them." The storm broke 2 nights later. Gunfire shattered the trattoria's windows, shards raining like brittle stars. Vincent's men arrived in a blur of black sedans, but it was Isabella who grabbed a cast-iron skillet, swinging it with the fury of a woman defending her roots. Amid the chaos, Vincent shielded her, taking a grazing bullet to the shoulder, a wound that burned less than the fear of losing her. As sirens wailed and the assailants fled into the night, he slumped against the bar, blood staining his shirt like spilled wine. Isabella knelt beside him, her hands steady as she pressed a cloth to the gash. "Stay with me," she breathed, her voice the Sicilian melody that had first awakened him. *cu sfarfallio di cori *, fight with the flutter of hearts. In the hospital's sterile hush, as dawn painted the skyline gold, Vincent made his vow. He would dismantle the empire's thorns, not for power, but for peace, for her. Isabella, in turn, promised to teach him the recipes of forgiveness, one whispered phrase at a time. Their love was no fairy tale, it was a vine, gnarled and resilient, twisting through the cracks of a hardened world. Months later, La Vite Vecchia reopened, its walls mended, its lights brighter. Vincent sat in his booth, no longer shadowed, watching Isabella greet patrons with her signature warmth. When she approached him, her smile radiant as Etna's sunrise, she leaned in and murmured, "Benvenuti a casa, amore mio." "Welcome home, my love." And in that moment, the Mafia Don's heart didn't just tremble, it soared, unbound, into the flutter of endless tomorrows. Thank you for watching this story till the end. Sparkles. If it touched your heart, please support us. Thumbs up, give it a like. Speech balloon, share your thoughts in the comments. Bell, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Your support helps us create more stories that inspire and make you believe in miracles. Your participation means a lot to us, Red Heart.